There is no red, white, or blue in this country. The only color that matters is green, because we live in the United Corporations of America. Greetings, salutations on this, I believe, solemn show. Because Zaina, I texted you before. Zaina Day joining us,
Hi,
the
guys.
author of the Bullhorn Bulletin, great independent journalist. The link to her Substack, which you definitely got to subscribe to, is in the description. You also are doing reporting for us, so you'll have some videos in between, underneath all of this craziness. First with Doge, which at this point, who remembers even the Doge craziness? Because there's a new crazy, illegal, dictatorial thing every day. In between the Doge craziness, the tariff craziness, what would you say? He did about 15 to 20 executive orders that are horrendous.
39.
39. Thank you. So Zaina is going to be doing a series for us on the executive orders, many of which you might have not heard of and are extremely, I don't even think concerning is the word, alarming.
Disruptive. They're gutting everything.
Yeah.
From social safety nets to regulation to freedom of speech in these executive orders. It's wild.
But Zaina, if you noticed, I try not to do too much clickbait, but I thought it was appropriate for this show. I put a red siren in front of the headline, because as somebody who has prided myself on trying in this last decade of Trump to be even keeled, not make everything an urgent emergency, democracy's dying, the walls are closing in, not be an alarmist just for click's sake, which we probably would have made a lot more money doing that. There certainly are some channels that did that when it came to Trump. I really think we're off the cliff now. It's not slippery slope. It's not teetering on the cliff. I think we're pretty much in a dictator zone. If MAGA's watching, they might say, what do you mean? Nobody's being rounded up. Well, kind of, yeah, they are. But I think we've kind of passed that dictator zone, because he's just blowing off the Supreme Court. He is blowing off another judge. So we have multiple cases where he's blowing off judges. He's blowing off the Supreme Court, which they're not exactly ruling with an iron fist ordering him to do something, but their ruling was clear in terms of returning Kilmore Garcia, the Maryland father who was wrongly deported to El Salvador. And there's also hot mic moment where Trump is just openly talking to the El Salvador president about, hey, I need you to build more jails because we want to start sending the, what did he say?
The bad ones.
The bad ones, i.e. the bad criminals, i.e. American citizens, to jails in El Salvador. So I don't really know what you would call this if a president is disregarding courts, sign of a dictator, authoritarian. If he's disregarding the Constitution, not all countries have a Constitution, but most have some basic laws that dictators would then disregard. We've already, as I reported earlier, American citizens are accidentally getting letters in the mail giving them 7 days to self-deport. That was received by immigration attorneys. So I don't think this is Trump derangement. I think we're legitimately at a real, I don't even want to say constitutional crisis, because I think leaders before Trump breached the Constitution. Obama breached the Constitution. Bush surely did. It's not unique to Trump to wipe your ass with the Constitution. But I think we are in a disaster because I think this man wants to be a dictator. I also don't think he's joking that he wants to serve 3 terms, which we'll get to. But smash that like.
At this point, experts are saying that we've ticked every check off the list for fascism. So
Exactly.
we've arrived.
Yes. And I want to be even keeled, right? Because it would be a lot easier for us to act like this is unprecedented territory and Trump is a unique threat. I think he is a unique threat. But the channels that are getting hyperbolic about it, they're not telling you that we already had fascism in this country, just a more backroom version of fascism, a less brazen form of fascism.
Every president in the last 40 years set up multiple buttresses for where we are today.
Right. So although two things can be true, we are at a very, very elevated level, and Trump is taking what Bush, Obama, Biden did, the Standing Rocks, which were fascism, the unleashing police on Black Lives Matter protesters, fascism, the unholy alliance between corporate America and our government. That's a form of corporate fascism. Fascism is not, there's different levels of fascism. There's white supremacist authoritarian fascism. There's corporate fascism. So fascism has existed in America, and I'm not here just for clicks to pretend that this is suddenly new. But, Obama did not disregard courts. Biden did not disregard courts. Obama did some things that I felt were extrajudicial, like killing Anwar al-Awlaki, I think was his name, the American citizen. But he didn't, say, hey, let's start sending what I deem criminals to El Salvador in jails. So we're not doing whataboutism here. This is worse than any of the Democrats that we rightly have criticized. So let's get to the newest nugget, because it's hard to keep up. Remember, because now everyone is focused, Zaina, on the Maryland father who, by all accounts, has been a good, I know he wasn't born here, but he had legal status. Good father. I think he had special need kids. His wife, which we'll show a clip, has, spoken overwhelmingly positive about him as a husband, as a father. Everyone's focused on that. But remember, before that, Trump sent 238 so-called gang members on a flight to Venezuela. Was it Venezuela? It's hard to keep up. I think Venezuela, where the Judge Boasberg.
El Salvador.
Thank you. The judge told, like mid-flight, said you have to turn that around. They did not turn it around. And since then, it's just been mired in court, where the judge has basically said, you have violated my order. But the Trump DOJ, which is not independent from Trump, Pam Bondi basically sounds like a public relation. The attorney general sounds like a PR person for Trump, sounds like a spokesperson for Trump. They've basically tried to play fast and loose. Oh, well, it's out of the U.S. court's jurisdiction once the plane left American airspace. I'm not a lawyer, but that sounds like bullshit. So the judge today, this is from NBC, judge finds cause to hold Trump administration in criminal contempt over deportation flights. Trump administration used a rarely used wartime law to deport people the administration claimed were members of a Venezuelan gang. To be clear, it seems that most of these people were rounded up based on having tattoos. And that is the Trump administration's proof that they are MS-13 or whatever gang.
And what you were thinking of is that the majority of these individuals are Venezuelan, but they're being sent to El Salvador.
Yes. It's really hard to keep up. It's hard to keep up where they're sending them, what the illegal excuse is, etc. And please smash the like button, because I think this is obviously a lot of people are covering this, but we're going to cover it in our way. But we got to get this out. However we got here, and I think the Democrats enabled this monster, we're here, and we got a monster. And we're going to have to tame the monster somehow, in my view. Federal judge said in an order Wednesday that he has found probable cause to hold the Trump administration in contempt over deportation flights that it sent to El Salvador. U.S. District Court Judge Boasberg found, quote, the government's actions on the day demonstrate a willful disregard for its order, sufficient for the court to conclude the probable cause exists to find the government in criminal contempt. The court does not reach such conclusion lightly or hastily. Indeed, it has given defendants ample opportunity to rectify or explain their actions. None of their responses has been satisfactory, the judge wrote. Boasberg said the administration could purge his contempt finding by taking custody of the people it deported despite his order and giving them hearings so they could challenge the allegations against them. The, quote, government would not need to release any of those individuals, nor would it need to transport them back to the homeland for that process, the judge wrote. In the event that the defendants choose not to purge their contempt, the court will proceed to identify the individuals responsible for the contumacious conduct by determining whose specific act or omission caused the noncompliance, he wrote, and that person or people would be prosecuted. In a statement, the White House said, we plan to seek immediate appellate relief, blah, 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 blah. So I got news for you. We haven't even gotten to the Maryland father, Kilmar Garcia, but I don't know what, I mean, I'm not like somebody who just like, is banking on American democracy and judges to do the right thing. I think we have two legal systems in this country, one for wealthy people and one for the rest of us, mostly one for wealthy white people. And judges are part of that system. But I got to say, I think the judges are letting them off way too easy, both the Supreme Court and this judge. You're just letting them stonewall and acting like this is some normal proceeding that, all right, you're going to disobey me. You're going to put out some bullshit legal doctrine that once the flight was out of U.S. airspace, you Judge Boasberg, don't have any jurisdiction. Why aren't you detaining the Department of Justice lawyers under Trump that are disobeying your rule? Why? I mean, I know it's heavy to say, why aren't you detaining Trump? I don't know how practical that is, but who was involved? You're a judge. You could get discovery expedited to find out who were in emails planning this, who was on the phone planning this. Why are they not being held in a cell? Why are you acting like in his ruling, it said something like, if you just you don't necessarily need to release them to avoid contempt. It seems to me, and the Supreme Court, which we're going to get to, they use these bullshit wording like you need to facilitate the return of Kilmar Garcia. I believe that was probably they had to water down the language to get the extremists like Clarence Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh to rule 9-0. But that even gave Trump an ability and his DOJ an ability to kind of play footsie with the word facilitate. But at the end of the day, they are blatantly violating your order. Forget what the order is. Forget if you're a MAGA person watching right now and you think they all should be deported. I thought the Republicans were the rule of law party. Well, the law would be the Supreme Court and district judges, and they are violating their order, which is literally how you get dictatorships. Your thoughts?
Well, were we about to cover this? Because just breaking, I just saw this from 2 hours ago. Judge Boasberg, and I hadn't caught it before, so I am just seeing this. Somebody had just shared this with me just now, oddly, as we're talking about it. Judge Boasberg, the court ultimately determines that the government's actions on that day demonstrate a willful disregard for its order sufficient for the court to conclude that probable cause exists to find the government in criminal contempt.
Yeah, that's what we were talking. That's what I just talked about. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry. I was a little lost there. I thought that you were saying he needed to hold them in contempt. And I was like,
no, he's holding them in criminal contempt. But with that criminal contempt, nobody's being held right now. Right. So if you're holding me in criminal contempt, let's think my cousin Vinny, right? These movies. And you're going to hold Vinny, the lawyer, in contempt, or any of these Law and Order. When you hold a lawyer in contempt, they are detained at that moment. Like, they're not like, hey, I'm going to give you a chance to write a brief or get around it. No, they're detained. So why aren't they
knock at our doors? They come and find us when we're in contempt of court. And, I will say one of the things that's striking me that I feel like these judges can do something about, obviously, is the fact that what they're calling illegal immigration, when it comes to most of these migrants having documentation for refugee status, whatever it might be, is just Biden's policy they don't like. It's just Biden's policy they don't like. And so they're calling it illegal, but it is not illegal.
Right.
These people were here, most of these people were here documented legally. They weren't even undocumented migrants, which we shouldn't send undocumented migrants to a slave labor camp in El Salvador, let's be clear. But these individuals were documented as well. So I feel like that could be another layer that the judges aren't even tackling. The fact that, yes, they're here legally. Why are you calling this illegal? Why are you claiming that they're illegal, aliens when they're not?
Right.
And why aren't there? And I guess that we're seeing a showdown here. Are federal agents going to show up? Who are they going to hold in contempt? Are they going to bring Pam Bondi in? What's Congress going to do about this next?
So here's a couple things. Number one, you got to look at underneath the hood. Why is Trump doing this? I think a lot of this is to distract the MAGA base from the fact that prices aren't going down as he promised. Prices are probably going to go up because of his insane across the board tariffs, which it just seems like he just rolls out of bed one day and whatever mood he's in, he makes up numbers for what percentage tariffs are going to happen. I think he's trying to do this to cover up and distract from, as you're going to report, the 40, 50, 100 executive actions he's taking to dismantle the government. So I think that this is the culture war on steroids to distract from the chainsaw, literally, Emperor Musk is taking to the government, agencies, regulations, the administrative state. So that's what I think is really going on here. I don't actually think Trump or the GOP genuinely give that much shit about illegal immigration, undocumented immigrants,
Well, I think
any
some
of that
of
stuff.
them are white supremacists who literally want to make our country white again. I'm not going to
Oh,
downplay that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think there's a method to why they are flooding the zone with the immigration stuff.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's to distract the masses, their own cult members. And I'm sorry, MAGA, this is a cult at this point. If you're in support of this, because the issue is, it doesn't even matter what specifically these court cases is about. This is about due process. So replace immigrants. Imagine that these people were being deported for a different reason. Imagine that these were Americans being put in American prisons without due process. People would rightly melt down. Well, anyone on American soil, according to our Constitution, needs to have due process, even if they're not here legally. So that's a much bigger, broader thing. And the point of due process is so mistakes are not made. So innocent people are not penalized, so that we actually have a thorough legal system. So it doesn't matter if you're watching, even if you're not MAGA, there's some independents who think we need stronger borders or more people that are not here, fair and square legal should be deported. But that's irrelevant. Do you believe we should have due process for these people? Because if you're going to take away due process from them, what makes you think you're not up next? Which is a great segue, because Donald Trump just told you you're up next. Colin, let's play the clip. Donald Trump with the cartoon villain president of El Salvador in the White House, basically saying, hey, we need you to build more jails so we could get the bad ones, i.e. American citizens, out of here.
Demanded the people wanted to change everything, and they wanted to. They demanded. They love you. They love what you do. I'm not here to support them. I want them to do. Homegrown criminals next. Yeah. I said homegrowns are next. The homegrown built. You got to build about 5 more places. Yeah, that's fair. All right. It's not big enough. No, yeah, come on. So this is a much different office than you remember.
Smash the like button, share this live stream. We got almost 500 people watching. I need a lot more of you to press that like button. And please, 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 if you don't know, we are expanding. We just hired a new reporter, Ashley, who's been doing great work. Zaina is doing work for us, so we got to pay Zaina, obviously. We also have John on the ground. He just covered another protest against the genocide in Gaza. We'll have that footage. Tina was out there over the weekend at the biggest Bernie rally on record, beyond his 2016 and 2020 campaign, 36,000 in LA. All this costs a lot of money. So please support us. Super chats are really appreciated. Even more than that, become a paying member today. As far as I know, we're the only independent outlet doing this level of on the ground reporting. All right. Let's start with the obvious. some of you might say, well, okay, he could say that, Jordan, but the Constitution is there and he wouldn't be able. Well, who are the bad ones? Apparently Trump would determine who the bad ones are. Well, who are the criminals? Apparently Trump and the GOP would determine who the criminals are. Well, I covered Standing Rock. Republicans have labeled climate and water protectors as eco-terrorists. Can Trump lump Standing Rock protesters or Line 5 protesters in Minnesota or Keystone XL pipeline protesters or protesters at coal mines or Medicare for All protesters or Free Palestine protesters? I mean, we could go down the list here. Seems to me if he's getting away with disobeying the Supreme Court on a Maryland father who was legally here, even though he wasn't born here, if he's able to disobey a district court judge sending 238 Venezuelans to an El Salvador prison camp, what makes you think you're safe if you're an American citizen? Maybe it's not to an El Salvadoran prison camp, but what makes you think he can't send you to Guantanamo, which is technically America? What makes you think he can't, without due process, just send you somewhere undisclosed camp in America? You might think I'm being dramatic, and I might have not even thought this 2 months ago. But you got to I've learned with Trump, take what he says seriously. Because what he said on the campaign, he's doing. I never thought Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned. Well, it was. I never thought, he's going to the Supreme Court for presidential immunity. I never thought, and a lot of so-called experts said, that'll go down 9-0. That's so ridiculous. He basically got presidential immunity. So this is beyond a slippery slope. If he could do this to, yes, they're not technically born here, but they have legal protections here. If he could waive due process for them, what makes you think you are safe? Your thoughts?
Well, he and Bukele also had a back and forth where Bukele was saying, I don't know. I can't bring anyone back. I'm not going to bring a terrorist back to the United States. And Abrego Garcia he's not a terrorist. That's been well documented. So anyone that Trump can label or wants to attempt to label a terrorist under the American Enemies Act, that he's trying to do all of this insanity under this umbrella of this one, antiquated law that is supposed to only be used in wartime. So everything is an emergency, complete deregulation of our of any oversight of any kind of fossil fuels or any kind of production. That's an emergency. We'll talk about it later, but RFK Jr. now says that, autism is a pandemic. We'll talk about that. And he's now claiming that, immigration is an emergency, but that crime in the United States is an emergency. So it's this fear mongering, this insanity. And I do think you're right. It's to, in part, distract from the robber barons who are robbing us blind in the background. So we're talking about this instead of that. But that doesn't make it not serious. It doesn't make it not a critical issue, because it is. They are dead serious. They will go as far as to start rounding people up to distract us. And it's terrifying. And with what he's doing on college campuses, what he's doing across the country, the quelling of freedom of speech, labeling anyone that dissents as terrorist. They've labeled anyone pro-Palestine whatsoever, or even anyone critical of Israel, even in the slightest, a terrorist. Visa card holders, green card holders on campuses who they have deported. So why would they stop? Why would they stop there? They haven't before. There's been no restraint so far in this first 90 days.
And I want to read this comment. I generally don't like the whole moral superiority complex on the left of like, well, you voted for Biden, or, voter shaming or this and that. But I think this comment is fair. I don't really remember this comment, but David says he said this. Jordan, I told you before the election that Trump would deport people specifically talked about your Palestinian friend. You didn't take me seriously. Apologies, David. I don't remember your comment specifically, but I think whether you're a YouTube host, a journalist, an activist, this and that, I mean, part of life is just admitting when you were wrong or admitting if you underestimated or overestimated. I don't regret my vote, to be honest with you. I voted for Jill Stein. I had many reasons for that. With that said, I can admit a lot of the things that Donald Trump is doing, I did not think. It's not that I didn't think he would try to do them. It's that I thought, based on the first term, courts would stop it, because courts did stop a lot of the worst things he tried to do. Thus far, courts are not stopping it, or they're at least delaying stopping it, or they're putting in these mealy-mouthed rulings like the Supreme Court, which we're about to get to, of you need to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. So it's, I think I did underestimate Trump. So I mean, if you want to feel morally superior, and like I told you, I mean, that's fine. I don't really care. But at the end of the day, we are where we are now. So I'll own an L when I'm wrong. But the broader point is, I think that this is now, I think his goal is to create basically a government police state and put his political enemies or those who don't succumb to his cult, whether it's going against law firms, whether it's going after progressives, whether it's going after progressive-minded protesters, because this is what megalomaniac narcissists do. If you do not bow down to them, and this is why he has always beloved and praised dictators, because I think in his mind he wanted to be one, because he craves attention and he craves adoration. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to remind people of something really quick, and this is just to make it clear some of the steps that helped get us here, because I think it's important to remember, because if people are going to fight this, if the Democratic Party is going to fight this, they have to go back to where some of this stuff is precedented or where they helped to contribute to it. And the redefinition of anti-Semitism and terrorism under the Biden administration, with a law that was passed and signed by both AOC and Bernie Sanders, by the way, redefined anti-Semitism to include criticism of Israel and humanizing Palestinians. So when we look at that, and we look at Congress did that under the Biden administration, there was also a tremendous amount of dehumanization. There were threats of calling the National Guard on protesters. There were threats of deporting students who were migrants under the Biden administration. So to be honest with you, I was worried it could happen under Trump, but I was also worried it could happen under Harris. And that's the truth. And I don't know that it wouldn't have. And I'm not saying that it's, I'm not trying to undermine the seriousness of what Trump is doing, but I am saying the last administration, with the way that they gaslit us every single day about this genocide, and the way that they dismissed and demonized pro-Palestine protesters and anti-genocide protesters, helped contribute to the climate where we're at now. There was no pushback on that rhetoric.
Yeah. And I honestly, I don't think now's the time we could do it another day if you want. We don't need to relitigate who is right or wrong. We are where we are. I think let's move on to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, because to me, this is a blinking red light. This is much bigger than this one man. Obviously, for his wife, it's not. It's about this one man. But for us, I believe we've fallen off the cliff, and what they're doing to him, which is just torturous. To be honest with you, my wife said to me today, and she might be right, what makes you so sure he's even alive still? Maybe that's why they're not lifting a finger to return.
To think, but that's a possibility. It's a horrific possibility.
So we got a few video clips, because part of dictatorial regimes and authoritarianism is just straight up post-truth and just lying as much as you breathe, which obviously Trump has been doing that dating back to his real estate deals, the birther stuff he pushed. But they just straight up, from every level, the attorney general, the press secretary, Trump, Stephen Miller, just lying. They're lying about what the Supreme Court said in its ruling, what the Supreme Court ruled. They're lying about this man being a gang member, which there's no real evidence for. Let's play the first clip. Attorney General Pam Bondi repeat the lie, repeat the lie, repeat the lie.
Topic over the past few weeks, Kilmar Abrego Garcia in Maryland. He's in a prison now in El Salvador. He was sent there. You insist, the president, everybody in the administration insists that he is MS-13. It appears that there's not going to be any sort of trial. He's not going to come back. DHS said he would be arrested and redeported if he comes back. Why not show the American people the evidence that he's MS-13 so they can make an informed decision? And that goes the same with this Henry Josue Santos, who was picked up in Virginia, who is now presumably going to be deported as well. Why not show the public the evidence?
Well, he is an illegal alien who has been living illegally in our country from El Salvador. ICE testified, an immigration judge ruled he was a member of MS-13, an appellate judge ruled he was a member of MS-13. Hard stop. He should not be in our country. He was deported. They needed one additional step
So
in
none of that is
paperwork,
true.
but
Literally
now
none of it.
That's all lies.
Yeah. And thank you, Joseph. Just gifted 5 Status Coup memberships. So 5 of you will randomly get a gift membership. I don't want to talk about membership right now because this is too serious. We'll talk about membership later, but definitely, please sign up if you can. We definitely need more paid support. I'll talk about some of the on the ground stuff we're planning on doing coming up. Okay. So that's just Pam Bondi. Okay. Then you have the press secretary who, I mean, just count to 5 before she has a primetime Fox News show. It's just definitely going to happen because she is literally the cardboard cutout of a Fox News anchor. Let's hear her lies about Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
The El Salvador questions. Yesterday in the Oval Office, administration officials made it very clear that El Salvador is responsible for Mr. Abrego Garcia, yet El Salvador...
The Democrat and media outrage over the deportation of Abrego Garcia, an MS-13 El Salvadorian illegal alien criminal who is hiding in Maryland, has been nothing short of despicable. Based on the sensationalism of many of the people in this room, you would think we deported a candidate for Father of the Year. That's because, unfortunately, many in this country care more about this quote-unquote Maryland father, a legal alien MS-13 gang member, than a Maryland mother and an American citizen who was brutally murdered at the hands of a different illegal alien. Of course, I am referring to Rachel Morin.
Okay, so again, that's all lies. But if you unpack the lies, first of all, I'm sorry for the woman who was killed. I don't know that story. What does that have to do with anything? I could come back and say, oh, well, you, Carolyn Levitt, and you, Stephen Miller, and you, Donald Trump, you care more about Americans so-called being murdered by the invaders than you do about children being gunned down in schools. Is that not murder? You don't seem to care about that because you're bought by the NRA and you bow down to the Second Amendment, which you have bastardized, which actually does not, according to the text, allow people to walk around with bazooka guns and shoot whoever they want. So you're conflating two things that have nothing to do with each other. Secondly, if this man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, from all the reporting, has been a model, I don't know if he was legally here, but has been a model father, husband, has not broken the law. Even if that were not the case, you still would have to give him due process. You can't just deport someone because he's a bad person.
You can't deport them to a slave labor camp with indefinite holding them there indefinitely with no trial.
So their talking point, oh, you make him seem like he's father of the year. Even if he was a scumbag father, even if he was a deadbeat husband, that has nothing to do with anything. They are trying to distract. They are trying to make this a culture war. They are trying to prey on in many cases, the pea brains of their cult and just make it a good versus evil thing. When it's not about good versus evil. It's about law and order.
It's old rhetoric. It's, it's birth of a nation, old Ku Klux Klan rhetoric. It's that rhetoric demonizing him as a person, as an individual, and then lying. It's like it's like old cases that we had, Emmett Till cases, the New York Park Five, other racist cases that we've seen in the past. It's the same kind of rhetoric, and I know that maybe Trump supporters don't like to hear that R word because everything's called that, but I'm sorry, that's exactly when it is that, and that is the rhetoric that is being used here. And what is so dangerous about that? It's the same as they're eating the cats and they're eating the dogs. But in this instance, it is to strip a man of his rights, send him to a slave labor camp in a foreign country where the president is mocking us, saying he doesn't have to bring him back. When we're paying him tens of thousands of dollars to hold each person, millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
We're
We're
paying
paying-
him with our tax dollars.
We're paying El Salvador $6 million for this. It might end up being more than that if he ends up building more jails to jail the bad ones, as Trump said. I'm surprised he didn't say bad hombres, because we know Trump and
The
his bigotry.
homegrowns. He said the bad ones in another interview. In this
Right.
one, he said the homegrowns, which is even creepier somehow.
So let me read you some facts about this. The facts behind Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia's deportation. This is from the Poynter Institute. Pretty straight-laced journalism. They just go point by point. Attorney General Pam Bondi, quote, in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that Abrego Garcia was a member of MS-13. Poynter says this needs context. ICE arrested Garcia in 2019 as he was looking for a day labor outside a Home Depot in Maryland. A police informant told police Garcia was an MS-13 member. Immigration judges denied Abrego Garcia bond, both initially and on appeal, citing the informant's accusation. Keyword, accusation. I mean, all you got to do is go through history. Informants are often coerced by police to just make stuff up, sometimes paid under the table by law enforcement to make stuff up. One informant does not equal evidence. In the initial denial, the judge said the determination of Garcia's gang membership, quote, appears to be trustworthy and is supported by evidence from the gang field interview sheet, which in part referenced the informant. So again, somebody said he's a gang member. So there's the evidence. That would not hold up in any actual criminal court. Well, I shouldn't say any, because there's a lot of kangaroo courts in America, but any serious judge or defense could rip through that. Abrego Garcia's attorneys have repeatedly said in court that the informant's accusation was fabricated. The immigration judge's decision to deny bond is not equivalent to ruling Abrego Garcia was a gang member. David Beyer, Associate Director of Immigration Studies at the Cato Institute, said.
She's a cute man.
Cato Institute is as kooky and fucking libertarian and conservative as they come. So if they're saying, yeah, no, this is an evidence, take it to the bank, MAGA.
Wow.
In immigration bond hearings, detainees have the burden of proof to show they are neither a flight risk nor a danger to the community. Abrego Garcia, quote, failed to meet his burden to show that he was not a danger, Beyer said. That's not the same as the government proving affirmatively that he was an MS-13 member. Quote, the immigration judge is only taking at face value any evidence that the government provides. It is not assessing its underlying validity. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Miller, when President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that Abrego Garcia was no longer eligible under federal law for any form of immigration relief in the U.S. It's inaccurate that the U.S. government's February designation of MS-13 as a foreign terrorist organization automatically revoked Garcia's protection from removal. Aaron Reichlin Melnick, a senior fellow at the American Immigration Council, said people who are not proven members of a terrorist organization are ineligible for protection from removal. But in Abrego Garcia's case, to revoke his protections, the U.S. government, quote, would have been required under law to reopen his immigration court proceedings and prove to a judge that he was a member of MS-13 and therefore no longer eligible for withholding. I could go on, but you get the point. Essentially, their whole assertion that he's a foreign terrorist, which, by the way, they just declared this group as terrorists 5 minutes ago, is an informant. I don't know who the informant is. I know just through my research and reporting on Flint, there were witnesses that lied. I know through documentaries, history, there's plenty of informants that lie and are then proven to be liars. Or there's informants that put forward information not intentionally lying, but they were wrong or misguided. That's why generally you need more than one witness. One witness typically doesn't do it in a criminal murder case. You need other, even circumstantial evidence. In this case, all they have is, an informant said he's a gang member. Well, what were the incentives proposed to that informant? Did that informant escape any prosecution or criminal punishment by informing on Garcia? We don't know.
Well, earlier this morning or yesterday, I believe a kid, 19-year-old, to me, that's a young person, was taken away by ICE when ICE showed up to take someone else. And they saw him and they said, well, we're not here for that guy. And I said, grab him anyway. Just round him up. Complete racial profiling. Didn't know who he was. Didn't know any of this guy's record. They just scooped him up. Jackbooted tactics. Brown shirt tactics. Just scooping this guy up and taking him based on his racial profiling alone to meet their quota, since the other guy that they were looking for wasn't there. And then they whisked up some kind of, reasoning that they're detaining him now. Based on what? So when I hear informants, when I hear this, I'm not trying to be conspiratorial, but I do not trust it, because this administration lies as they breathe. And ICE has been proven to be unreliable right now, and many members of ICE racially driven and not driven by following the letter of the law and making comments such as, Trump's in town now, you're an R word, or we're hearing all kinds of stories of just insane overreach by ICE. So I don't know what to believe. But if he was not determined foundationally to be a member of MS-13, a member of the gang, and there was just one witness, nothing else. I mean, one guy they have in custody because he wore a Bulls jersey, and that's the only reason. And they say, well, gang members wear Bulls jerseys. So do Bulls fans, right?
Yep. And by the way, in 2019, when he was arrested with 3 other men in Maryland, they were detained by federal ICE, basically. An immigration judge later that year, 2019, granted him legal protection from deportation on the grounds that he might be at risk of persecution from local gangs. So it seems, I don't know the full story down to the T, it seems like he fled El Salvador, not because he was a gang member, but because he was trying to escape that life. So it's just beyond preposterous. But the broader picture here, and we're going to show a video in a minute from his wife, because it is about this man. But beyond this man, again, if you genuinely think Donald Trump, who has gotten away, I believe, with sexually assaulting and harassing at least dozens of women, who has gotten away with, I believe, several crimes, that if he lost this election, he'd be looking at convictions, stealing classified information, lying to the government about that classified information that he stole, which no MAGA, you can't just, when you're no longer president, wave a wand and declassify everything. He stole classified information. He had boxes of shit just lying in the bathroom and on stage at Mar-a-Lago. He directed his staffers at Mar-a-Lago to move it when lawyers were coming down to hide it. If he could get away with all this stuff, I mean, that's just some of what
people stay at his hotels to the tunes of tens of millions of taxpayer dollars that were paid directly to his businesses.
I mean, he got away in the 80s, the 90s with money laundering. He has got away with stiffing contractors, not paying contractors, man of the working people. He notorious for stiffing contractors on his buildings. He's a crook. I mean, when somebody is emboldened and thinks they are basically untouchable, they go more extreme. So to me, this goes beyond Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I feel terrible for him, his wife, but I don't think this is going to stop at undocumented immigrants. I think they're going next for the homegrowns, which we already went through. They get to determine who are the homegrown terrorists. And I think they're going to be the climate protesters. And I think they're going to be the healthcare protesters and the Free
And we
Palestine
can't forget
protesters.
he tried to revoke birthright citizenship for second generation born.
Right. Absolutely. So let's get to his wife. I mean, if this doesn't, I don't care if you're MAGA or not, if this doesn't move you at all, then you really need to see a therapist because this is really heart-wrenching. Let's play the clip from his wife.
Of after his disappearance, and I stand before you filled with spirit that refuses to bring down. I will not stop fighting until I see my husband alive. Kilmar, if you can hear me, stay strong. God hasn't forgotten about you. Our children are asking, when would you come home? And I pray for the day I tell them the time and date that you'll return. As we continue through Holy Week, my heart aches for my husband, who should have been here leading our Easter prayers. Instead, I find myself pleading with the Trump administration and the Bukele administration to stop playing political games with the life of Kilmar. Our family is torn apart during this scary time, and our children miss their dad so much. Despite the challenges we continue to face with the U.S. and the Salvadorian government, I hope that the strength of faith and the resilience within us will keep us standing after all the punches we continue.
Brutal. It's just brutal. And again, it just goes back to the point that we were talking about. Forget what you are, if you're a lefty, conservative, just common sense. Do you really think undocumented immigrants are the biggest crisis in America? Do you really think undocumented immigrants are why some of your towns look like ghost towns? Your plants are closed. Your storefronts are boarded up. You have lawns in some places a mile high with grass. You have vacant lots in some cities. You know, a sea of vacant lots in Detroit and Flint and elsewhere. You're working 2 jobs. You can't get full-time work. You're getting denied health care. You really think the undocumented immigrants are to blame for all that? Because that's what all this is about. It's not about tightening the border. We don't have a country without a border, as Trump likes to say. This is about giving you an other. This is about giving you someone to blame. This is about tapping into your cultural insecurity and your changing demographic insecurity and preying on that, which Hitler did and Mussolini did and many other dictators
And we've done time and time again.
This, to me, this isn't even on the top 10 list. And that's not to say people in Arizona near the border and Texas don't have serious gripes, because there has, they're not all, great people coming here, and there has been violence. But there's mass shootings that these people don't seem to give a shit about. There's crime that happens all the time in America they don't care about. They only care about crime if it's brown people.
Our healthcare industry, by denying people, kills tens of thousands a year.
Way more people. So they don't really seem to care about all crime, just certain crime that they could demonize, otherize, and basically be bigoted towards certain people. And that's what this is all about. Real quick before we move on, I think there's a reason this is happening. If you have the story, Colin, from 404, ICE just paid Palantir. That's Peter Thiel's Palantir. Peter Thiel is one of these tech feudalist tech bros that basically is why J.D. Vance has ever been anything in life. He paid for J.D. Vance's companies. He paid for J.D. Vance's Senate seat paid $15 million to elect J.D. Vance to the Senate. ICE just paid Palantir tens of millions for, quote, complete target analysis of known populations. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? Last week, ICE paid contracting giant Palantir tens of millions of dollars to make modifications to a powerful ICE database and search tool to allow, quote, complete target analysis of known populations and to update the tool's targeting and enforcement priorities, according to procurement records reviewed by 404 Media. The records show that Palantir, who, by the way, also has worked with the NSA on spying on you, is actively working on and making updates to the technical infrastructure underpinning the Trump administration's mass deportation efforts. Folks, this should scare the living hell out of you because the truth is there are not enough undocumented immigrants in America to meet the quota that Donald Trump has of how many he wants to get rid of.
There are not 20 million undocumented people in this country. That is false.
So why do you go to a company like Palantir to, quote, widen what did they say? Widen the known populations? Because you're going to start going after people who are not undocumented. You're going to start, oops. Oh, we found these people with undocumented people, so we rounded them up too. I mean, I've seen stories.
Palantir partnered with Israel in their crackdowns on Palestinians and even Israelis monitoring their social media when they were jailing people early last year and into this year, especially folks in the West Bank.
I mean, it's just, and by the way, we're going to get to Bernie and AOC and the Fight Oligarchy tour. But if it comes down to you're going to be targeted, if you're an American citizen, you feel confident with Chuck Schumer on your side? You feel confident with Hakeem Jeffries on your side? You feel confident? You feel confident that you have an opposition party that's going to go to the gates of hell to free you? I sure don't. I do not. I didn't expect to go a full hour on that topic, but I think we could go probably 3 hours on this topic. Do you have any final thoughts before we move on to the next thing, Zaina?
I think we covered it all. It was a lot to cover, but I think the takeaway is that it can happen to any of us, every single one of us. If you think you're protected from this because you have a white name and a white face and you live in a rural area, you're not. No one is. Once we breach this line in the sand, no one is safe. Not a single person.
And I just want to be clear why I've been so critical. I mean, this isn't the only reason, but why I've been so critical my entire career of the Democratic Party is not because I thought the Democratic Party was worse than the Republicans. I mean, objectively speaking, on cultural issues, on extremism, the Republicans are worse than Democrats. On economics, I think they're two peas in the same pod. But the bottom line is, you're delusional if you think the only thing left is we have to get rid of Trump, and that stops this. The genie's out of the bottle, folks. When you allow this fascism to fester, sure, you might get a less bombastic fascist if you get rid of Trump, but he's unleashed a fascist movement. So the only way you stop the fascist movement is not just we need to get rid of the fascist leader. You got rid of Trump in 2020. It didn't end with getting rid of Trump, which is, I think, what a lot of Democrats wanted you to think. If we just get rid of this, we'll return to normal. No, you don't just return to normal because he has tapped into and unleashed a fascist, bigoted, xenophobic, cult-like movement. So he's just going to be replaced with J.D. Vance. He's just going to be replaced.
Too much benefit for the oligarchs on every side of the aisle and across the spectrum. So
yeah,
they're going to play both teams once they've realized this power can be wielded.
The only way to stop a fascist movement, other than a war, World War II, is a bold, populist, progressive economic alternative, which is popular even with some of these people that have been hijacked and radicalized by Trump. So let's get to that. All right. We covered two of the Fight Oligarchy rallies, one in Nevada that Tina Desiree Berg covered, the most recent one in Los Angeles. I really think because of all this madness with Trump, this isn't getting enough attention. Zaina could tell you, because Zaina has actually worked in politics. You've worked for about 50 to 100 campaigns.
Yep, about 100.
It's incredibly hard during an election year to get 1,000 people, much less 500 people, to a rally. In an off-election year, what you're currently seeing is historic. As far as I know, it's never happened in America, in modern-day America, where you have, Colin, let's just go down the list of tweets I sent you from the Bernie AOC tour. I would argue they're more coming out for Bernie than AOC, but whatever. Folsom, California. These are just tweets from Bernie's communications person, because she has, the pictures and everything. I can't begin to describe the crowd here in Folsom, California to see Bernie and AOC. We thought 20,000 might show up. At least 30,000 people are here, and there are many still in line. I've never seen anything like it. Folsom, California, I mean, I think that was just a few days ago on an off-election year. That's not all progressives. There's a lot of normies in there. There's a lot of boomers in there, even though a lot of boomers are progressive. A lot of the boomers were, normie Hillary voters. And I've seen it out at the Tesla protests that we've covered. And John has seen it, and Ashley has seen it at some of these anti-Trump protests. There's a lot of normie Democrats out there that are speaking more progressive language. Then you have Bakersfield, California, which is a Republican bastion in California. It's pretty Republican. 2:00 on a Tuesday afternoon, 5,000 people, 4,450, including 500 in overflow. That's a Tuesday afternoon in a Republican area. This is a flippable district. Valado won last year with just 53% of the vote. Idaho. Trump won this county that they held a rally, Nampa, I believe it's pronounced, by 71%. Bernie in this county, in Idaho, 2016, 3,200 people showed up. Bernie 2020 in Idaho, 7,000 people. Bernie in Nampa, which Trump won by 71%, 12,500 people in an off-election year. I mean, that's insane in a good way. Utah, pretty Republican state. 20,000 people in Utah, including 4,000 in overflow, came out. And then she does a quick recap for Bernie's Fight Oligarchy tour. Prior to this leg, 107,000, almost 108,000 people had come out to 8 stops across 7 states. So far on this leg, we've had 102,000 people, almost 103 on 5 stops, on to Montana tonight. And then obviously LA, which we covered the other day live. I don't know, Colin, if you had a chance to get any of the video or footage from that. That's 36,000 people.
Remember that there are more nurses and patients and community members like all of you than there are of them. We practice solidarity.
So that's
on our values of care and compassion.
So that's our cameraman that you Status Coup viewers paid for. This is the importance of signing up as a paid member. We covered the Fight Oligarchy rally in Vegas. We just covered the one in LA. And we want to cover a lot more, not just rallies, but organizing, which we're going to get to. Please sign up. Respectfully, there's a whole lot of channels asking you for money that are just bloviating in the studio. We're actually out on the ground. Because we've grown since August of last year, we're up 240,000 subscribers. That growth has helped us hire our first full-time reporter other than me. It's not cheap. Obviously, you got to pay people a living wage. You got to pay for their health care. We're happy to do it. But we don't have, the ghouls and the billionaires buying the Democratic and Republican Party funding us. The majority of our funding comes from you. So if you can, please support us. But Zaina, I want to get to this because I don't even want to get into 2028. There's some channels slobbering
that's what
over.
Most people are talking about, and that's the frustrating thing. But yeah,
I don't want to get to 2028. I don't want to get to AOC because, frankly, I'm not. People are getting very overjoyed about AOC and Bernie's anointing her as the successor. put aside whether you agree with that or not. I don't. I don't think AOC, at least her track record now, would be my chosen successor. I think a few things here. Number one, I'm going to give the good and the bad, and then I'd love your thoughts. The good, I think we're finally starting to see the progressive message break through to normie Dems. And that has been a decade. Well, that's been way more than a decade project, but at least for our purposes, in the Bernie decade, since he announced his run in 2015, 2016, I mean, a lot of these people at rallies did not vote for Bernie in primaries. A lot of these people at these rallies are bigger than Bernie had in his presidential campaigns. A lot of these people, you could say, well, Jordan, they're not coming out for Bernie. They're just happy someone's fighting. Whatever the reason they're coming out and they're cheering for Medicare for all. They're cheering for fighting oligarchy. They're cheering when Bernie shits on the Democratic Party. They're cheering even for AOC, which a lot of them were fed by MSNBC is a radical. I don't think she's radical enough, frankly. So something is shifting here. Something is shifting, and that's a good thing. The bad part is I don't personally, and I don't want the audience to make the same mistake. I think why there was such a backlash against Bernie after Biden was because a lot of us got caught up so much in the Bernie movement that we put way too many of our apples in one leader. We put way too many of our apples in if we just elect this one person, or if we just elect this squad, we could really overtake this corrupt system very quickly. I even, taking away the journalist hat, I as a person got caught up in it. How could I not? I covered like 30 Bernie rallies. You get caught up in 2016.
Covered all of our candidates.
Yeah, I covered congressional candidates. As a human, you get caught up in these moments and you really think, holy shit, we could really topple this corrupt system with this one person. Somebody makes a great point. People thought that with Obama, even though he was selling a bunch of bullshit. So don't get sucked in that the way to defeat Trump or the way to defeat fascism is just if we elect a progressive. I'm not saying don't try to elect a progressive, but we need a lot more than just electoral politics now. And I fear, based on the coverage I've seen in some other independent media channels, who I like, but they're very focused on, AOC is the successor for 2028. I don't care if she is or not. AOC, if she won the presidency, is not on its own enough to stop this fascism. No. I know it's easy in the moment to get caught up into the electoral part of it. It's easy to get caught up in the, holy shit, we're getting, for progressive causes. We even have MSNBC covering this stuff. Don't get caught up in, let's only focus on the electoral, because to me, in this moment, you need a lot more than electoral politics. You need a lot more than focusing on 2026 and 2028. You got to do more than one thing at a time. And to me, we got to organize. I think now is a moment not just to go after Trump and his fascism, but to economically organize economic strikes, build up to economic boycotts, continue our strengthened labor unions, not just focus on Bernie, AOC, and maybe we can elect AOC. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are right in line. That's what I was thinking when I was looking over what we were going to talk about today. I'm excited to see so many people come out. I do not want to see Resist 2.0. And that's what I'm afraid of. Like, where is this energy going is important to me. And when I saw AOC's campaign manager talk about how she's raised $9 million in the last quarter and being excited about that, and then he said, oh, we've already paid our dues to the Democratic Party, our $270,000 to support incumbents. I was like, that's what you're doing first? So my thing is, I want to see mass people come out, but I don't want this to shift into what my worry is. My worry is it shifts into getting away from boycotting Tesla, which is working. It is putting pressure. It is working. Do not stop doing that. Or getting away from, instead of donating $9 million to AOC, which she'll give a whole bunch of that to Middle Seat, who she's already paid $20 million to, which is a consulting firm, for instance, made them incredibly rich. Instead of giving to these candidates when elections aren't even close, give to maybe people that are helping to Fund people like Garcia's wife so that she can fight this in court. Fund to places that are helping migrants with deportation orders. Fund, your local food banks if you have an extra $35, because this economic crisis is about to hit us hard, and we're going to have to dig in our communities. Try to form a labor union. Try to get with people in your community and form a co-op. We got to dig in and we got to support each other. And I'm afraid we don't have 4 years. It's really a privileged place to say that we have 4 years. It might be for you. Maybe this stuff isn't touching you yet, but I'm somebody who's afraid. I'm poor. I'm a brown person. I'm half Middle Eastern. Been reporting on this stuff for a decade in politics. I'm scared. But I know I'm not the only one. I'm not only economically scared, but I'm scared of what this fascism can do to my family. And that's personal. But at the same time, it's personal for all of us, because it's going to eventually affect every single one of us. And this has only happened in the first 90 days. Imagine if we just set aside and we just wait another 4 years because AOC is going to run for president and that's all that we do. I'm really hoping that this energy does not go in this direction, and that people keep boycotting, people keep protesting, people keep building unions, run locally, try to take over the state house, run as independents in the state house in the next 2 years. Don't just focus on, what's happening in Congress and getting one senator in that's not even going to swing a freaking vote. We have to do something that's going to work here, people. We've been trying the same thing over and over again, and it's not working.
And I feel like, Colin, I feel like we're going to have to, in addition to the snowflake alert that I had you make, we're going to have to make a nuance alert, because that triggers people too when you offer nuance on the internet these days. But nuance is allowed, and I'm here to tell you, it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can focus on 2026 and 2028. To me, I say with all this energy, why are we only talking about 2028 federal? Here's a great opportunity to run local candidates, city council, school board, anti-fascist, progressive, populist candidates across the board locally, because local politics affects you much more directly than national, and you can actually get direct relief and structural change much quicker on the local level. So it's sexier to talk about AOC. I don't mean it like that. I mean, like, politically, it's sexier to talk about 2028 presidential, and it's better for the algorithm if you want to grow on YouTube. But I'm talking about actual change and results. Let's take this direction electorally on the local level, city council, school board, county commissioners. I don't care if it's the fucking PTA, all the way up to state assembly, state senate, Congress. And then, we can talk federally too. But we could do more than one thing at a time. You could focus on and take this energy electorally while doing also the things that Zaina and I are talking about. Your response will be, well, Jordan, I got fucking 3 kids. I'm working 2 jobs. I don't have the energy and bandwidth for all that. Of course, we all can't do it all at once. So pick whichever one you think is the right direction for you and go that way. Let's also remember, Bernie has said, not that it has to be blessed by Bernie to do it. Bernie has said, run independent in certain situations, like Dan Osborne in Nebraska. So it doesn't have to be running in the Democratic Party. I think it would be great. I think now is a time. You got Republicans screaming tax the rich at Republican town halls. You got Democrats screaming at Democrats at town halls. What better time where an independent candidate might have more of a chance?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're not going to have the obstacles you always have as an independent. The Democrats trying to sabotage you, the Republicans trying to sabotage you.
That's going to happen no matter if you run outside of the establishment. It's going to happen to you anyway.
But I just don't want to see, because I have been caught up in it. I am a journalist, but I'm a human before a journalist. I mean, I covered the Washington Square Park Bernie rally in 2016. Inside the park, about 30,000 people. Outside, total about 40,000 when you factor in inside and outside. How could you not get caught up in that and think, wow, this man could take us to the moon? It's hard not to get caught up in that. Enjoy the moment, feel the hope, because we do need some hope, but don't get sucked in. And don't forget, this is the same AOC who did not endorse Nina Turner until the day before the election in Congress. This is the same AOC that directed some of her money to basically right-wing Democrat candidates to be a team player in the Democratic Party. This is the same AOC that for a long time was tweeting mostly about identity shit, not about Medicare for all.
Yeah.
Would I rather AOC as president than Donald Trump? Yes. And anyone who says otherwise, you're fucking insane. I mean, that's just, would I rather AOC than any of these people? Trump, Vance? Yes, I would. If you say lesser of two evils, okay, sue me. Yes, right now I'd rather AOC than any of these people. But let's not whitewash. She did not leverage her power. She did not, as she said, we're going to bring the ruckus to the Democratic Party. Well, that ruckus basically ended on day one after she rallied with those Sunrise Movement ralliers outside Pelosi's office. Well, she got a fucking lashing after that. And since, I mean, hell, you know, Zaina, her chief of staff and communications director left based on my reporting because she did not stick with the bringing the ruckus to the Democratic Party.
Establishment people at the behest of the Democratic Party.
Yes.
But, you know, that's 4 freaking years away. We don't know what's going to happen. This dude's a fascist dictator. I mean, I'm not being hyperbolic. I know I don't like to use the F word. I didn't like to use the D word. But that is the circumstances we are in. That's what this administration is doing. And look at what they've done in the last 90 days. We don't know where we're going to be. We have to focus. I'm not saying we don't focus on the future, but right now, the long game is a long ways away. And I agree with you. I have many criticisms of AOC. I have some criticisms of Bernie himself. I am glad that people are talking about the things that we've been fighting for forever, which is Medicare for all, which is a living wage, which is family medical leave. All of that stuff is needed. And I'm glad people are hearing it and getting that message. And I'm glad there's a massive turnout. I just hope that the massive turnout turns into something and that it's not like, you know, the pink pussy hat marches that ended up nothing. You know, there was a resistance for like 4 months and then it was done. And a lot of damage was done by the Trump administration after that. So, but COVID happened then. So it's a different environment, but I'm just hoping for something a little bit longer lasting. And I hope that AOC and Bernie are responsible in how they direct this energy. You know, instead of bragging about raising $9 million for what? Maybe focus that energy on how people need to organize right now to protect their community.
And before I run, Zeta's going to take over. I got to go take my daughter to a bubble party. My 2.5-year-old daughter at the library. I want to play because I texted you this earlier. It sure seems like James Carville accidentally urged progressives to form a third party. I don't know if you heard the same thing I heard. But James Carville, the dinosaur himself, who hasn't been right politically since 1992, he wants the wokes, the so-called wokes, out of the Democratic Party. Let's play that clip, Colin.
So maybe we need to have a schism. Maybe you got plenty different, the Justice Party, the Working Families Party, the Socialist Party. The only thing I'd ask is just don't use the word Democratic in any title that you have, because most Democrats that I know that are running for office don't want your name, don't want you to be part of the deal. Yeah, they would be glad to take your votes. Who wouldn't? Everybody wants to get as many votes as they can. Maybe you come up with your own name. And by the way, nothing against after the election, can sit down and do like is done in parliamentary governments or governments around the world. You sit down and you say, okay, we want to be part of a governing majority and we have these things that we want you to do to bring us in, and we have negotiations, and we figure a way that we can live with different parties, different titles, but under the same general philosophical roof. As I've always said, been very clear that most of the things that the faculty lounge or the Identity Left wants, 85% of them, I want to. We'd like to expand opportunity for people. We'd like to expand people that have health care. We'd like to do more to help young voters. We think that everything that I can tell you, and you say this guy is stuck in another century, not another decade, and he represents nothing to do with the future of our movement, I can accept that. You know, 'cause you're not really going to hurt my feelings. So maybe we could have a kind of amicable split here, and we'll go to post in 2026 because you don't ever run.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. And I'm going to pitch a video that I did about, 3 weeks ago in response to Bernie saying to run independent. If you guys want to understand what it takes to start a third party, because everyone's always talking about we need a third party, that can take up to a decade. So please go watch that video, understand what it's about if you're interested in that kind of thing and what kind of opportunities there are with running Indy, how the ballot access and system and stuff works. We covered it for Status Coup. I got a whole video on that, and you guys should go check that out. But if Carville wants a split, you know, he's getting old. I feel like it's like F it. He's in F it mode, but he's not wrong on some of what he says there. It's surreal hearing it from his mouth, but there's truth to that. There are two factions of this party. One of them is neoconservative, the other is progressive. But the majority of people who support the policies, and they have been fleeing the Democratic Party and registering independent, lean more populist, more progressive. They support things that actually help us, like a living wage and healthcare.
And I just found and put the video you're referring to in the chat. So if people want to watch Zaina's, I think it was like an hour and a half video explaining kind of running independent versus third party, the obstacles for both, I would definitely encourage you. It's in the chat. Here's the link on the screen. I just put it in the chat. You should definitely check that out. Real quick before I go, first of all, you might be asking folks, who cares about what James Carville says? Well, he's on TV a lot, and it's James maybe not him, but the James Carvilles of the world are still de facto running the Democratic Party. True. Maybe not him, but this neoliberal third way thinking. And I will say, he is wrong in terms of these people truly, either they know they're lying and they're just pushing this as a denial mechanism, or they're delusional. They truly believe that they've lost to Trump now 2 out of 3 times because of wokeism or the left.
Yeah, that's insane. I agree with him on the split. I don't agree with him on the we haven't moved far enough right. Are you kidding me? Like Kamala ran as Trump light. She rehabilitated Cheney. What universe are you in?
Every exit poll from the 2020 and the 2024 election shows the top issue was not woke. It was not pronouns. It was not transgender boys and women's sports or any of this bullshit. It was inflation, people's wallet in 2020, COVID, and the economic issues related to that. I mean, do some voters, like, does it factor in? Yeah, but it's not people's main issue. Okay. And there's people that voted for Trump that are not MAGA cultists that don't like Trump, but voted for him despite not liking a lot of his shtick or fascism because they wrongly thought he'd be better on the economy. So there are people who might find like stuff a little irritating or they don't get it, but still vote for the Democratic Party. Two things can be true. And I personally, I think all of it is just a distraction. I don't think pronouns, wokeism is in the top 20 of reasons people vote. Most people are not that narrow-minded. I mean, there are some people that are just out to lunch and bigoted and stupid and easily distracted. But are you really trying to dare people to join the very people that have 30,000 people, 36,000 people out in LA, 5,000 people during lunchtime in fucking Idaho? You're daring them to split? What kind of political strategist are you? You're basically telling the people with all the momentum, yeah, go start your own thing. So you want to burn your thing?
They should, because he's right. The party isn't going to change. That's what the leadership really wants.
Yes.
So, I mean, if he's encouraging people to do that, even if it's a threat.
Folks, speaking of threats, I do have to go, but don't go anywhere because Zaina is about to pick this up. She's about to do a story that I think is dangerous in a different way than Trump, we all knew RFK. You know, some of you might like him on, I agree with him on taking the bad shit out of food. I agree on that. He's done some good environmental things, but to me, the bad far, far outweighs the good. This is a conspiracy theorist, literally with brainworms. Literally has had brainworms. And he is now calling autism a pandemic. Zaina, you take it from here. Thank you for the super chats. Zaina will read them at the end. I got to go take my daughter to a bubble party, and we'll be back at it tomorrow. Take it from here, Zaina.
Thanks, Jordan. Okay, guys. So, as Jordan was saying, RFK Jr. came out today at a press conference. The CDC had released a report talking about some recent research that was done regarding autism, and fairly extensive research that was done regarding autism. However, in his hour-long screed, he misrepresents the data so deeply that the CDC was actually complaining and put out a press release regarding all the misconceptions that were in this press conference. One of the things that the CDC highlighted is that there is an increase in diagnoses of people with autism from 31 to 30, from 1 out of 31 to 1 out of 36 to 1 out of 32. Now, one of the reasons that there has been an increase over time in diagnoses of autism is because there are more people diagnosing autism. It was discounted in women before, so people are getting diagnoses later in life. They're diagnosing it in children more often because more people are getting screened for autism. There's more awareness of autism. Also, the spectrum has been expanded to include people that used to be categorized as Asperger's, because now we understand how autism affects the brain, or the way that the neurodivergence works. And I'll remind people, autism is not a disease. It is a neurodivergency. The brain works differently. One of the reasons I'm so familiar with autism, what autism is because I myself am on the spectrum. My daughter is on the spectrum. We've both been diagnosed. So I'll just fully disclose that, yeah, this was personal to me as well, but it's also extraordinarily alarming. I want to go ahead and play the clip from a small clip from the press conference. Do you have that for us, Colin?
Sir. This is an individual tragedy as well. Autism destroys families. More importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children. These are children who should not be suffering like this. These are kids who, many of them were fully functional and regressed because of some environmental exposure into autism when they're 2 years old. And these are kids who will never pay taxes. They'll never hold a job. They'll never play baseball. They'll never write a poem. They'll never go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted. And we have to recognize we are doing this to our children.
I'm sorry, but no, that is not factual. RFK Jr. has been peddling this line since the early 2000s, a extraordinarily debunked mountains of scientific evidence debunking the theory that vaccines cause autism. It has been debunked multiple times. In fact, the person who made the initial claim was trying to sell a vaccine of his own and faced fraud charges and was convicted of fraud in England, and also abused children in this study and misrepresented children. So it was a false study to begin with. That is the only study of its kind as far as that found any nonsense that he was trying to say that it happened in the gut biome, and then the gut biome in the mother somehow transmitted autism to the child. There is also no evidence that there are any environmental factors necessarily that Somebody can be born non-autistic and then at 2 completely retrograde. There is a tremendous amount of misinformation about autism. And I want to pull up an article here from the Autism Society, because these are people that have researched it. These are people that are advocates for the autistic community, for parents with autistic children, for autistic adults. And before I get to this article, there's something that I want to make clear. Instead of recognizing that it is a neurodivergency as part of our personality, I am not a diseased individual, although I do have symptoms that impact me. I have sensory issues, I have headaches, I stim, I have a lot of different traits. I am on the spectrum. I'm a stage 2, so I mask better. It is a spectrum across the board. However, our brains just work differently, and that is scientifically proven. They have studied our brains, our neural pathways are different, and it contributes tremendously to our personalities. So for a lot of autistic people, autism is literally a part of who they are. It is not a pandemic, it is not a disease, it is not caused by diet, chemicals, ketosis, these kinds of issues, as far as we can tell. And treating it that way treats us like we are a diseased individuals. And that is the scary part. It is extraordinarily ableist. So instead of providing health care, instead of providing accommodations for autistic people in the workplaces, RFK Jr. is claiming that we can't go to the bathroom ourselves, or that we can't hold down jobs, we can't pay taxes. There are about 20% to 25% of people on the spectrum that do have other physical disabilities as well, or inabilities. Some of them are nonverbal. That creates barriers, but also they can be very very intellectual and be nonverbal. There are people that have a lot of different kinds of varied issues. That's why it's a spectrum. Just because somebody looks like they don't have any issues doesn't mean that they don't. However, what autistic people need are accommodations. They need healthcare. They need ADA. They need 504s in school so that they can get help from their teachers. And blaming it on environmental factors or blaming it on parents is essentially erasing that aspect. Let's pull up the document really quick so that we can close out, because I think Colin has another job right after this one. Statement on RF Kennedy Jr.'s comments regarding the cause of autism and misleading deadline. So yeah, he's also pushing forward research to be conducted, millions and millions of dollars into research, and there's already mountains of research on autism. He's dismissing any other research that's already been done in order to mine for confirmation bias. And I'm all for more research always at any time, but the way that he's leaning is toward eugenics, and it's frightening and extraordinarily concerning. The Autism Society of America finds the administration's claim that we will know what has caused the autism epidemic and will be able to eliminate those exposures to be harmful, misleading, and unrealistic. Autism is a complex developmental disability shaped by genetic, biological, and environmental factors. It is neither a chronic illness nor a contagion that qualifies harmful language like epidemic, and to do so is both inaccurate and stigmatizing. Autistic individuals are human beings who deserve dignity, respect, and equitable civil rights. Leading disability organizations. The scientific community and medical experts agree more rigorous science-based research is necessary, not speculation, oversimplified timelines, or diminished transparency. And then we can read a little bit about the dangers of misinformation. Claims that autism is solely caused by environmental exposure, parenting styles, or vaccines not only lack scientific evidence, but are incredibly irresponsible. These misleading theories perpetuate harmful stigma, jeopardize public health, and distract from critical needs of autism community, including access to quality care, early intervention, adult services, inclusive education, long-term support, stated Christopher Banks, president and CEO of the Autism Society of America. The false claims that vaccines cause autism have been thoroughly debunked through decades of rigorous global scientific studies involving millions of individuals. Continuing to promote such discredited theories not only waste valuable resources, but also risks damaging public trust in life-saving immunizations, further endangering both the autism community and society at large. And one of the things that they're worried about is transparency when it comes to the research that he wants to do. And the fact that he wants to roll out the initial phase of the research in 90 to 120 days. That's nothing. This type of research takes years to conduct, and not going into the bank of research that has already been conducted. So it is important to do research, but treating autism like a pandemic is dangerous. It's dangerous. And a few months back, RFK Jr. floated the idea of people on SSRNIs, people with ADHD, which is often co-occurs with autism, or people that are people that have depression, people that are autistic, can work on farms until they're essentially cured. And that's a scary prospect. He said it would be completely voluntary, at least at first. So he's floating some outrageously crazy ideas. It is non-scientific. And then I'll close out by saying this number that it has increased is because, and this is very well known, more diagnosis. Women like myself were not diagnosed when we were younger because it mostly focused on males and mostly focused on white males, to be accurate. So people of color were not diagnosed as often. Women were not diagnosed. And even people in poor and rural communities were not diagnosed. So with so much more information, and also with broadening the spectrum to include people who used to be considered what was considered Asperger's, which is what they call higher functioning, but of course it is a spectrum, so the functioning fluctuates. It is more people are being diagnosed. There's going to be more cases that are identified. So it's dangerous rhetoric. I don't know what's going to come of this research, but it's definitely something to watch out for, and is extraordinarily alarming. And I saw a lot of response today from parents of autistic children in the autistic community who are very worried about this, because autism, for one, can't be cured. And for two, it is a dynamic part of our personality, how our brains work, how our thought process works, and in part who we are. So curing it is essentially changing people as human beings. And if you're going to do prenatal diagnosis, that could mean potentially not birthing children because of autism, because of a neurodivergence. And that's a dangerous path to go down. So do we have any super chats? Not to transition from something so bleak and dark, but yeah. Oh, Foop Lee. Thank you, Foop Lee. I kind of like that name. Thank you so much for becoming a member. Hello, Denise. How are you doing? If you want real change in the world, we have to be the propaganda machine for truth. The filthy rich will block us every chance they get, so share often. Absolutely, 100% agree. We don't need heroes, we need bullhorns. I completely agree with that. 6 Cents Amelia. Donald brought the Tate brothers back. Ugh, I know. Those creeps. Deporting people without due process and bringing known predators back into the country. It's a twisted world. Humorous. I tried to send a message. Apparently YouTube didn't like what I was trying to send, and you all don't get freaked out over that. Oh, I didn't know that, Humorous. I'm so sorry. Thank you for letting us know, and thank you so much for the super chat. Joseph George. Thank you so much for becoming a member, Joseph. Oh, you gifted 5 memberships. Thank you. Thank you so much. Scott Hars. There is a reason Germany built Auschwitz in Poland. If you're not familiar with the Martin Niemöller poem, you better get familiar with it. First, they came for the socialists, and no one stood up. Thank you so much, Scott. Humorous. YouTube blocks your paid support. I'm serious. If you want to say something which is free speech and they don't like it, they block it and they won't even let me send it. I'll let Jordan know. Maybe we'll have to look into that. Thank you for letting us know, Humorous. And thank you so much for your super chat. A child begging, what has this world become? Absolutely. Joseph George, even if AOC talks half decently, DNC will just Bernie her. That's true. That's true. The DNC will throw everything at her if she tries to run, unless she capitulates. Humorous, thank you so much for your super chat. Joseph, what the hell did you just say? Do you even know how fairly did you pay attention? I'm not sure what that is, but I am sure that is probably directed to another chatter. And thank you so much again for your super chat, Humorous. Dorothy, thank you so much for becoming a member. Awesome. Thank you. Welcome. Welcome to the Status Coup. Scott, thank you so much for another super chat. His grandfather was a crank as well who gave his Aunt Rosemary a lobotomy because she suffered from depression. And I guess you're speaking about RFK Jr. because I think I heard that story before, and that's really sad. But that was something that was extraordinarily common during the Gilded Age, which this administration seems hell-bent on taking us back to the period of the Gilded Age and the robber barons, which is extraordinarily concerning. Brenda, thank you so much for your super chat. They want us to force more babies on the planet into the socioeconomic system they never agreed to beforehand, but upset when more are on the spectrum. Well, that's it. I hear what you're saying, but it is definitely in part because there's more people being diagnosed. Thomas Cross, you do now. Love you, Status Coup. You do now. Love you, Status Coup. Thank you, Thomas. I was making sure I was reading that correctly. And is that all of the super chats?
Yeah, that's all of them.
All righty. Well, thank you guys so much for joining tonight. Please like, please subscribe, and if you can, please become a member at StatusCoup/donate, www.statuscoup/donate. And if you give there, we'll get more of it. But you can also become a member on YouTube, and also keep a lookout. I have a few videos coming out, as we had mentioned earlier, on the crazy executive orders that have been coming down the pike. Also, please stay tuned. We have some more live coverage coming up this week. We have some great reporting coming out from our newest full-time reporter, Ashley. So thank you guys so much for joining. Appreciate you. Please like and subscribe, and have a great night.